guest is a nutritionist. She's also a physician, and one who inspires a lot of us, particularly the woman or the girl, because she's the first female to ever serve a president in Ghana as a physician. I would like to welcome Dr. Bettina Bohin-Anda to the AM show. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for allowing us into your beautiful home, really.
Well, thank you very much.
I want us to go back into how you started, where you grew up from, because some people would think that you were probably born into riches. You were raised really cool so that you got the opportunity to serve a president in that capacity.
Well, I wouldn't say I was born into riches, but then I also always say that I have no apologies for being born into a fairly upper middle class family.
So how did that inspire you as a young woman, to indeed go on to become the person that you are today?
Well, my father was a great inspiration to me. My father, as I said, is a pediatrician, and I always saw him going back and forth, saving lives, children, sick children. They come to the house sometimes. We follow him to the hospital, and the next time you see the child is well. So I kept saying, I didn't know what it took at the time, but I always kept saying, I really want to be a doctor. I didn't.
So you're not forced into becoming a doctor?
No. I know, my children complain now that we tend to, as parents, mirror our lives with what we wish our children would be. My father encouraged us, but he didn't necessarily, mirror that whole thing. He just wished, of course, if you're a doctor like I am now, I would wish one of my girls, I have two girls, would become doctors. But if they don't, it's not a big deal. And that's exactly what my father did. He encouraged us to excel and achieve in whatever we did, but he never forced any of us to do medicine. So I was definitely not forced to do medicine.
Okay, so you got the job in 2004?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Can I ask you how much he was ready to pay you?
Well, this is a very interesting question, because that's a question most people would want answered. The president employed me as his physician, but he didn't pay me out of pocket. Government of Ghana was paying me. And the interesting thing is that they paid me just like any physician, at my level. So I was being paid by the Ministry of Health, just like anybody else.
Nothing extra from the president's pockets?
No, definitely. You travel, you get per diem. Probably, and that is what Ghanaians are very excited about. When they hear per diem, they, get very excited, and they are thinking it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. I wish it was. But that was what we got extra for traveling. And even in the ministry, when anybody travels on a conference or something, they get extra money for, per diem, for boarding and lodging and that kind of thing. So it wasn't unusual for a public servant to get per diem on my travels. But out of pocket, this man was like a father to me, and therefore if he decided to give me something, that was totally private. It had nothing to do with him being a president and dishing out money to people. I don't think he had that money to dish out to people anyway.
So you went everywhere with the president as his physician.
Yes.
And you're a mother, you're also a wife. I want to understand how you were able to mix all these together.
Well, I keep saying that it wasn't very easy. In fact, it was hard. I started leaving my first child during her first year of life. I just had her not long after I was thrust into this position. And
did you at a point, think, okay, I can't leave my child and take this job?
Well, it was something I thought about right from the beginning. And I told the president, I said, I've just had a child, just had a baby. And he says, I know your mother is capable. She can take care of the baby. But go and think about it and come back. So I came to my husband. My husband said, Amma, out of 1,600 doctors in Ghana, people would wish for this job. Moreover, why has he chosen you amongst all these people? So whatever family support we can give you to help you to go through this, we are prepared to do it. And my mother said the same thing. She said, well, even when you're here and you start work, You come and dump the children here, go to work, come back in the evening and pick them up. So what's unusual? I can take care of the kids, so, just go for it. So the point I'm making here is that if I didn't have the kind of family support that I had, there was absolutely no way I would have been able to do this job.
Can any young girl who perhaps did not go to Achimota school be you?
I don't see why not. I kept telling her recently, my daughter had a little setback. And I said to her, it's not about where you are. It's about what you make with where you are. I know people who came from lesser privileged backgrounds. I know people who didn't go to the kind of school that I went to, and yet they've probably achieved more than I have. So it's all about determination, it's about self-will, it's about focus, and it's about dedication. And I always say, brighten the corner where you are. President Kuffour saw me that day, he knew me, but it must have flashed through his mind that, look, there's somebody who has a plaster cast on her leg. And you'll expect that at that time, I was on leave because I was on sick leave. I called my husband to bring me to the hospital. So he must have said to himself that, look, somebody with such absolute dedication and commitment. So I don't think it's got much to do with schoolboyism or schoolgirlsism or whatever. I think it's more to do with what you want to achieve and your focus.
So, Amma, can we understand what you do now presently? If the government is out, it means that you don't have a job anymore. Is that what it is?
Well, luckily for us, I tell people all the time, once you're patient, always you're patient. The fact that he was the president at the time and I was his physician doesn't mean that now he's out of government, I'm not his physician anymore. I still continue to look after him. And the interesting thing is that when I left public sector, I'm not in public sector anymore. And when I left, I then decided to set up a small clinic and a little lab as well, a laboratory. So together with my
setting up a clinic is huge. You make it sound like
Well, I'm not so sure. It depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at a place that has every other machine you can think about and has all these gadgets and stuff like that, then it's a big thing. But pretty much what you need is a desk, your personal body, a chair, a cupboard to keep your folders, and it's really not as capital intensive as people will think. Of course, you have to pay rent for the premises, but that's what I'm doing now. So I have my clinic that I run, but I continue to look after His Excellency, former President Kuffour, as my patient, together with his wife and his family. So I'm still looking after them.
So you're also a nutritionist. How does that all come together?
Well, it comes together very well. What happened was that I looked at the diseases that are affecting us now. In the past, we used to talk about malaria, bilharzia, and all these other conditions. But now we are picking up more of things that are prevalent in the developed world. So what we are picking up now is hypertension, lifestyle diseases, that's what we call them. Hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, and those kinds of conditions. And they are lifestyle diseases, that's why we call them lifestyle diseases, because it's to do with your diet, lack of exercise or otherwise. And so that's what motivated me to do nutrition, to make sure that I am making an impact in the management of these kinds of conditions.
These days in Ghana, when people die, it's always a suspected heart attack or heart failure. What is it that we're not doing in the country as a people?
I wouldn't say what is it we are not doing. I think what is it we're not doing enough of. Because I go for walks sometimes in this area, and you see other people also going for walks. You see people jogging, people going for walks. And therefore, we're doing it, but I think we still have quite a long way to go.
All right, so Amma, you've written this book, The President's Physician, Bums on a Smooth Road. Is he happy about it, though? Do you make certain revelations in the book that he's uncomfortable with?
No. I dare not bring out this book without his consent. And he read the book from cover to cover.
Are you forced to delete certain things, though?
No. Strangely enough, when he read the book, he was very happy about it. And actually, he reminded me of certain things that I had not covered in the book. Mind you, he's still alive. I Googled biographies or autobiographies or memoirs of physicians to heads of state. And the only one I came up with that was even just a paper was on a president who has passed on, and his physician was documenting certain things. So it's not a common thing to have a physician write memoirs when the physician, of course the physician has to be alive, but when the president is also still alive and around. So I had to take into consideration a lot of security issues because we worked in a security setting. And I had to also take into consideration his private life. I didn't want to, delve too much into what he did privately because that is not public information. He's a public figure, yes, but you have to respect that as well. So when I was done with the draft, I gave it to him and he read it. You realize that at the beginning of the book, he's written a message. Initially, I thought he was going to write a few words, and that was the agreement. And then once he started putting pen to paper, it became a whole message.
Oh, so he wrote it down by himself?
Oh, yes. I mean, anybody who knows President Kuffour, who's worked closely with him, will tell you that you give him a speech, he'll barely read what you've given him. He wants to be in the speech. This is the way he put it. So if you write something for him, he's likely to edit it and rewrite the whole thing. So he wrote this himself. And, of course, the foreword was written by His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo. So he also read the book.
What's your connection with him?
Well, it's in the book, but he met me, a woman amongst many men, because most of the people who were working with us were men. So, and we had a few secretaries, but they normally wouldn't be. We had a core group of the ADC, Chief of Security, Chief Detail to the President, and his protocol officer, and me, of course. So amongst those 5 or 6 men, I was the only woman. So the first time President Obasanjo met me, he wondered what I was doing there, So he asked his friend and brother, President Kuffour, who this young lady is. So he called me and he said, oh, this is my doctor, and she's taking the place of the other doctor, and blah, blah, blah. So as usual, he's very humorous. He cracked a joke and said, are you sure you can take care of this man? And we had a laugh. But I think he always engaged me in conversation, and we kind of gelled on certain issues, especially girl-child education, because former President Olusegun Obasanjo is doing a lot in girl-child education with his foundation. So once we got talking and he realized that I wanted to achieve and I wanted to impact other girls' lives, we got along. And he's been like a father to me since, even during his presidency, after his presidency, he still keeps very much in touch. So I couldn't find a better person to write this forward. And he obliged without any coaxing or cajoling.
Let's go to page 69, and this is on the spiritual impacts, the fiscal. What's that about? Is in your book?
Yes, I mean, that's about how far the God that I serve has brought me, because I'm a born-again Christian, and I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm very proud of it. And there were so many incidents during the presidency that were almost, they were prophesied. For example, you read in the book, there was a trip to Mali, and before I went to Mali, my prayer cell leader called me and said, she doesn't know what's going on. Auntie Sandra, that's her name. And she said, Amma, I think we need to pray with you and anoint your feet. Because she's never done that. She's very matter-of-factly, we study the Bible. Anointing is something she doesn't wade into unless she's absolutely certain. So she anointed my feet. And she said, I said, Auntie Sandra, what are you seeing? Tell me something. She said, don't worry about that. Just go. Whatever God wills is what will happen, but I don't think anything will happen. True to form, we went for the trip. The last day of the trip, I was coming down a flight of marble stairs. I slipped. I almost fell, and these were marble stairs. If I'd hit my head, that would have been the end of it. And I sprained my leg, my ankle, the very legs that she anointed. And I was in a plaster cast for close to 3 weeks. So I couldn't help feeling, because it's not something she's ever done. I said, let me do this or let me do this before you go. We just pray a normal prayer, and then I go on my trips. And then also, there was different issues. I wouldn't give all away because that's the whole purpose. People should buy the book. But then there were different issues that when President Kuffour had his accident, which I'm sure you'll come to, I couldn't be in a better place than at my prayer cell meeting, which I normally would do on that Wednesday, that fateful Wednesday that happened. I was at my prayer cell meeting praying. The strange thing is that we're praying about accidents, because around that time there was this whole spate of accidents and, very tragic things that were happening. So that's what we're praying about. And when I'm communing with my God, my phones are on silent, at least for the 20, 30 minutes that I'm doing that. And my phone kept ringing, but because it was on silent, I didn't know. So when I picked my phone, I had numerous missed calls. President had an accident. They had taken him to the castle, sat in my car, and I sped off to the castle.
What are you thinking on your way to the castle?
Well, I mean, it was one of anxiety, but then I kept calming myself down. I mean, I just left a prayer cell meeting. They prayed with me before I left. And I said, God, I just know that you're in control. And so I don't know how I got there, but I was from Nungwa to the castle, took me. I I don't do all this siren business and all of that. The ambulance was not with me. But then I got there, and as you read in the book and as all Ghanaians know, President came out of that accident unscathed. So I think that where I was at that time also impacted. People may not agree with me, but these are just my thoughts. And where I was at that time impacted on what may have happened to him. Because don't forget that I was solely in charge of his health. We had many consultants we worked with, but from day to day, I was the one who was taking care of him. So you can imagine if something drastic had happened, I would have had to bear the brunt of it.
Okay. I want to move on to, the fact that just being around a president, I mean, he's a political figure, the leader of the NPP at the time. Did that make you NPP too? How did people see you?
Oh, well, I mean, I would have been surprised if you hadn't asked this question. I went in there as a public servant, purely as a civil servant. And as you know, civil servants should be totally apolitical. And that's exactly what I tried to be. Of course, everybody would say that if you were a strong member of the opposition party, you probably would not have, gotten this job. And I may agree with them, but I definitely am not, and this is for the record, I'm not a card-bearing member of the New Patriotic Party. I worked as a public servant. I did what I needed to do at the time. And for me, that was it.
I've turned to 142, and it's the politics of the position. What are some of the things that you most remember?
Well, being a woman, the politics didn't necessarily mean the politics as an MPP NDC, no. It meant what I had to deal with as a woman in that position. Sometimes I felt discriminated against. I mean, there are times where...
Really? Even as a doctor? Because that's a very privileged position.
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, you go somewhere and the first question they ask you is, where is the doctor? Sometimes they come up to me and they say, oh, we have, especially those who don't know Ama as a day name, would ask, where's the doctor? Because they think maybe Ama is a male. So they'll ask, where's the doctor? Then they point to me. And then they say, oh, is it you? And I said, yes, it's me. So I couldn't help feeling it was also because of my age, because I was never dressed, in a suit, and I always wore very practical clothes. I probably wear a pair of chinos or a pair of jeans, and,
So I'm surprised that, certain people would see you and because of the way you dressed, for instance, discriminate against you, not think that you are the president's doctor.
Well, for me, it's not surprising because I faced the same thing when I was in Rich Hospital. They'll open the door, knock on the door and open and say, in our local parlance in Chi, where's the doctor? Doctor, no way. Because they're assuming that if I'm in there, I must be the nurse. You understand? We have these positions that we think are just slated for women. And those...
Is it still the same today?
Oh, yes.
Because I'm surprised.
Oh, yes. I mean... Even in, and you see, with the medical profession, people always see doctors very smartly dressed, their long sleeve shirts, sometimes even ties with their white coats.
Exactly.
Exactly. So if you saw a doctor, And my good friend and spiritual mentor, Dr. Lawrence Tete, always said to me when we got to the UK and he was at the airport with the delegation to meet us, all he remembers about me is getting off with my chinos, a very simple shirt, pulling my doctor's bag along.
Yeah, I've
you
seen,
know,
I've seen
you've
some
seen,
of
yeah,
those
you will,
photos.
you know. So I didn't get offended when they asked me, you know, where's the doctor? And I'm like, that's me. And, you know, then they'll say, oh, sorry, you know, it's just that we the name Amma, you know, we were not sure. But obviously in their mind's eye, they were thinking it was a man. And so those kinds of things. And then, of course, there are certain places. We went to Libya. That's not covered in here. But we went to Libya, and being a woman, when my president would move, all of them would go with him, and I was the only one who was not allowed. Because they'll go into the meeting place, like if they were going to meet the president at the time, who was President Gaddafi, they would go in there and you can't go in because you're a woman. You know, so I went to a few of these countries.
Even with you?
Oh, yes.
Even after knowing who you were?
Absolutely. So they'll put us, I remember we went somewhere in the night for a dinner, and they put me very far away from the men, which for me was quite discriminatory. But I wasn't offended. I just took it in my stride and went along with it.
Mm. So what's the one thing that you still remember? I know you're still practicing about those days serving President Kuffour.
Mama V, you are pushing me now, because the one thing, very hard for me to figure out what that one thing should be. Mm. But there's a chapter in the book which talks about journeys, memorable and
not so memorable.
I won't touch on the not so memorable.
Why not?
I'll leave that for the readers to figure out. But I'll touch on the ones that are memorable. One that I remember is my visits with the president, the state visit to Buckingham Palace, to visit the Her Majesty the Queen. And that was amazing. I mean, normally sometimes I would be away from where the president is because of lack of space. But in this particular instance, they insisted that his physician, they take over your security, but they insisted that his physician should be in the same building as him. And that was inside Buckingham Palace. I would not have ever dreamt in my whole life that I would be inside the walls. I mean, normally the best you get is stand at the gate and take pictures with the guards, you know, the guards who are nicely dressed. Mm. But I was inside there. I had my room. I had my lady in waiting who would take out my stuff. I mean, that was
like
amazing.
Some royal treatment.
I'm telling you, I had to pinch myself almost every morning and figure out it was just 3 days.
Oh, you lived there for,
yes, I lived
for
there
more than...
for 2 nights, which was 3 days. That was amazing. And then having the banquet, you know, with the Queen. And so there were a select few people who were allowed to that banquet, and I happened to be one of them and sat right next to the Queen's physician. So he was, 70 odd, you know, an old man, and he was amazed to see that the president's physician was barely 40. And we had a good chat. He sat right next to me. And for me, I cannot forget that trip.
You can write a whole book on that experience.
I'm telling you, I mean, I woke up and the kind of crockery and cutlery we were served with, that for me was just amazing. And I think that's one journey I cannot forget. I can never forget. There were other ones that were similar and equally important, but that one stood out, you know, significantly.
So I'm looking at the young people because I see that one of the reasons you put this together, this book, is to inspire young people. So what would you want them to take out of it after reading it, you know, from the beginning to the end?
Well, what I would want, especially young girls, and I'm not being discriminatory, but it's because they're saying that now the boy child is extinct, or the boy child is rather going through problems because we're doing all this girl child business. But I still stand for the girl child, because I just keep saying that we come from a culture where we limit ourselves to what we are capable of doing. even in our generation. I have 2 daughters, and sometimes I ask them, Kweba, go and do this. And she says to me, oh, mommy, this one, I can't do it. She's limited herself already. I don't think that the girl child should limit themselves. That is one purpose of writing this book. I've also encouraged people who come from privileged backgrounds, because we went to school with people who came from privileged backgrounds, and I've come to note they are on the streets, some are on drugs, some had everything they wanted and therefore are not used to hard work and were not able to make much with their lives. That's also a lesson to pick from this book. The other lesson to pick is that hard work pays off. And you don't necessarily have to be in everybody's face and be showing everybody that you're working hard. Wherever you are, if you work hard and you are dedicated to what you do, you may not be picked as the president's physician, but definitely somebody out there will recognize that you're working hard and will pick you out. And so, limitations for women, no. Hard work, yes. Dedication, yes. Commitment, yes. And that's what I'll say that they should take from this book.
How are you dealing with all the attention that you're receiving now? I mean, I'm sure before this, you're a very private person.
I was. I mean, even during the presidency, we always stayed in the background. Rarely. I mean, on the Buckingham Palace trip, I sat in a horse-driven carriage, and therefore you saw me, whether you liked it or not. But having said that, every time we're on a platform, we'll be in the background. So for me, I did my book launch, and I thought, okay, the media were there. That's fantastic. Then I was watching myself on television. I thought, well, this is getting a little too much. But then, in my bid to get the message out there, I think I'm prepared to let go of that private area of my life so that I can... You see, people want to put a face to a book. You don't only want to look at the picture on the back of the book and just say, oh, is this what this woman looks like? But if you saw who wrote the book and you heard the person speak passionately about what they've done, I think it makes a big difference. So I have not cut out, all the media and saying, well, sell the book, but I want to sell the book, but I don't want the media. They come hand in hand. I mean, if you want the book to go out there and impact lives, you've got to be prepared.
But do you fear sometimes that, your revelations would get a bit political, will feed on the politics of it?
Well, when you take these decisions, definitely you should know that you're going to get a backlash. I hope, and I remember in my speech when we had the launch, I said I've had my fair share of, backstabbing and lashing. So I hope that there wouldn't be much of that here.
Oh, so you're receiving already?
No, not from this, but from the job I did.
Okay.
I've to be honest, I've only received a lot of complimentary things from this book, and I hope it remains complimentary. Having said that, I am open for criticism and for critique. I've sent this book to a lot of people who are prolific writers, people who are, good readers, and they criticize certain things that I said or how I said certain things, and that's the only thing that will make you move ahead. I mean, if you don't want to be critiqued or criticized, then I don't think you want to. But it has to be constructive criticism and not politicizing it. I'm not a politician. And on this platform, I'll say I really don't care for politics, but I just want this book to get out there to the young girls and impact their lives. That's pretty much why I wrote the book.
So now the book is launched, it means that people can get it out there to buy?
Yes, they can. The book is available currently in the Legon bookshop. It's available in the bookshop in the mall, in the Accra Mall.
Silverbed
stores. It's also available in EPP Bookshop. It's available in African Regent Hotel. They have a shop there. And then it's also available, soon available in Kingdom Books.
Okay.
We're just trying to get some of the books in there. But and then I have a website where they can't buy the books from there, but I think it will be useful for people to visit that website. And it's www.thepresidentphysician.com. So I hope people will visit the website and keep up with the events of the book.
Thank you, Amma, for your time, for allowing us into your home, and for sharing all the thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.